Okay, soil tests. Ewan, you're the expert, so take it away. Give us the information on what everyone's asking you.
Yeah, well, look, the big issue is people go, oh, I've got this soil test and there's not enough information. And what people don't realise is that being really accurate at the soil test can find the issues that you are facing or the limiting factors that are causing problems on your farm, lack of production, animal health issues. And so it's really, really important to be accurate about this whole process. And you can see, like here, we're taking 300 mil probes now, and we split them into two profiles from 0 to 150 and then 150 to 300. The second profile is purely for organic carbon, for carbon monitoring. But the issue is with all of this stuff, we have to be really careful about where we do it. And so like on the next slide here, you'll see that when we pull these plugs out and you've got a profile like this, you can actually see what's going on with the soil. And you'll see on the right-hand side there, I'm taking a photo with the GPS.
That's what that is. That's not just a cell phone.
No, and the GPS has got to be really accurate too, because we found out that some of them aren't that accurate. But what that does is when we take that photo, it's a day, date, time recognition of that position that we took that photo from. So we can go back there exactly, or within 1 meter of that.
You're kidding. Within a meter. I suppose that's what GPS is meant to do.
That's right. And so what happens then is that we're actually taking the parameters and getting them tighter and tighter and tighter. So we go around the farm and we'll take 16 plugs of a particular soil type or a part of that farm. And from that, we get the top 150 mil and we break that down into 2 soil samples. And it's really important to do this. And so you can see it's Dad's front paddock and it's pretty dry, but we've taken the plugs there. We go to the next slide. Right. And so then we break them down and we use a very technical gate bolt, 150 mils long.
Handy.
No, it's very handy because it's actually brilliant. It actually measures the soil depth, but it also cleans the probe out if you get it jammed in there and you don't want to put your finger in it because it really hurts otherwise.
Yeah.
So this is where you get, you measure it up, you take the photos, we know exactly where it's come from. So then we can come back here. And this is the part when you're going year on year out, you need to know the numbers. And I mean, you really need to know the numbers because people are getting caught up with these silly little soil tests that are taking 4 minerals and they don't see the correlation between the different elements, the effects they're having on it. And these soil tests, when they're coming back, as we go on a little bit further, they're telling you a story so big that people, what? And so quite often when I'm talking to people on there about their soil types,
well, of course, a lot of people haven't gone this in depth, right?
No, and I'll be talking to them and say, oh, you've got this on your farm and you've got that on your farm. You go, how do you know? You haven't even been to the farm. I said, your soil test is telling us by the numbers what's actually going on.
Right.
And you can see in different parts of New Zealand that there is differing numbers for different particular locations. Sure. And that's just the base soil material that forms the soils in that area. Right. And I mean, we're going to see that in a very particular way. So
look at that.
This is a farm in Taranaki, and we didn't do the soil testing that we were doing the pictures from here, but these pictures are, the little flags are where the GPS markers are of where we've taken the soil sample.
Well, this is perhaps a good example, though, compared to the one on your dad's farm, because in this case, you can see in this mountainous, almost sort of quite hilly terrain, just how far you go with all of those areas and all of the specific GPS spots, right?
Yeah, and so we can go back there and be really, really specific. I mean, it can be a bit of fun following the arrows around to get to the particular point. And Paula calls it the Campbell Carbon Shuffle when I'm walking around the Jeep over here and over there. But it's it's very good to go back and do this again. I've never found the hole we went last time, though.
They've always filled in. What do you know?
Amazing.
So I guess if this is how many you do, perhaps it's going to have a really busy and scary looking outcome, right? Can I go to the
No,
next
it's
slide?
not. Well, see, one of the things about doing this with 16 plugs too, there's a statistical data point collection process
Right.
in this, and when we're doing these for carbon sequestration, you've got these exact points, you've got enough statistical data. It's a sort of randomized part of the farm that you've taken it from, so you've got a really good data set. And I mean, this is sort of what Texas A&M University, Perth, Western Australia, their agricultural industries have recognised this type of testing for a way to do carbon testing.
The pennies just dropped for me. So in a way, you've got like peaks and valleys that you're picking.
Yes. Yeah, we just pick up a random part so we get a really, good reference of the farm.
Right. Well, because I imagine in different, I imagine you'd have silts and things gathering in the valleys.
Yes, but this is really interesting. Like Taranaki is Taranaki, and it all came out of that big hill.
Okay.
It's the biggest fertilizer spreader you could ever find.
Right.
I could just about.
And it's pretty even?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, apart from what people have thrown at it, the base material is very even.
Right. Do you want to see the next slide?
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, when I first saw this, I was like, numbers. Yeah,
they're gobbledygook. So on the left-hand side there, we have what we call an S007 test. And it's a test we do in Brookside Laboratories. And people ask me, why do you go overseas? Well, I trained with Brookside in the late 90s, and I've found them exceedingly good. They just give you information.
Mm.
If you're looking for something else, some more questions, go, yes, you need this, or you need that. But they come up with this S007 test because New Zealand has a very high aluminium content in the soil.
Okay.
And they were trying to express, some of the consultants back in the early days actually picked up on this really quickly, that we need to be very, we need to look at this aluminium as a real issue. And it is a major issue, and it needs to be dealt with. And so you need to know the numbers. So what we have in this test, we have 3 lots of aluminium. 2 of them are really, really important. But we'll see in the next test about how effective that is. But we'll just look, and on the right-hand side there is a test that I don't think, where some of the labs are starting to do them in this country now. That's what you call a total test. That's a chemical melt. It's akin to a mining assay.
Okay.
So the one on the right-hand side there, it's under total soil analysis. It's a chemical melt. They've just melted it completely and told us how much nutrient is in your soil in total.
I think we better go to the next slide because it's going to...
it's really
this is actually melting my brain.
This is melting.
Whereas this, I know it seems more complex, but you're highlighting certain things so I can draw my attention to it. And we can actually also pop out of the presentation. You want to zoom in on something?
Okay, cool. So
I'll do that,
So what we're looking at here is like, you've just got this massive numbers and it doesn't make any sense to anybody. Okay.
Yeah.
But to my eyes, it just tells this story.
Yeah.
Okay. I can tell within the first couple of minutes that it's actually, when I'm at 30 seconds, it's come from Taranaki, because only Taranaki has 50 parts per million of copper.
Right. That's right there where you've highlighted it.
Yeah,
there.
it's right there. See, and that is a very, very interesting process in itself. It's like, so when you go to a farm in Taranaki and it's got all this copper, it's there. I've seen sheep in Taranaki that are copper deficient.
Wow.
Even though they've got all this copper. Now, the copper deficiency is caused by selenium. So you've got to know these things about what's going on. How, like, people going, oh, well, I'll jab our cattle with copper. No, you've got plenty of copper. You just need to give them some selenium or put it in the soil. You'll solve the problem.
Okay, so this stuff on the right-hand side where you've got boron, iron, manganese, copper, zinc, and aluminium, is this... Oh, look, it's still got the American spelling on it, aluminum.
Yeah.
Because this comes back from the US, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
So that's the chemical melt that you're talking about?
Yes, that's right. That's the total amount per hectare. So when we look at the soil to start with, I'm always looking at this number here to start with. How much calcium have we got in our soil?
9007 in this case.
Okay, and so when we're looking for every kilogram of calcium, it's equivalent to 3 kilograms of lime.
Okay.
So there's 27 tons equivalent of lime in the soil.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That's amazing. Before you go on, because I'm sure people having seen this straight off are going, okay, you've got lines from one side to the other and this sort of almost recycle symbol in red, which actually means that the lines go both ways.
That's right. It's interreactive.
So on that one, we've got double-ended. I see you've got everything seems to be going from the left to the right.
Yeah, well, what I want to show you
but
here.
some of them go back the other way.
Yeah, that's right. So what I want to see here is like, okay, there's lots of calcium in the soil, which means the soil can grow.
Yeah.
It's usually the limiting factor. But what we're seeing is that there's only 2,267 kilograms of calcium per hectare available. So we're looking at, around 27, 28% of the calcium available. And you go, something's wrong. Because if the soil's working well, it'll have at least 50% in this situation. It'll be available. So this should be 4,500 kilos per hectare if in this type of volcanic ash. Now we got to look at, okay, so what's the issue?
Do you mean, why is it only 2,200?
That's right.
Right.
Why is it not more available?
Okay.
And what we have to look at in this one, and you can see all this bunch of red arrows that come from over here over to
the right-hand side.
To the right-hand side. And we'll see here this phosphorus and calcium. And what invariably it leads back to is a lovely little thing over here called aluminum in the United States, but aluminium. Now, this 5 parts per million, that's toxic to biology.
Right.
And so when people are, use underarm deodorant, it's aluminium sulfate. So if you want to kill bacteria in that, just get a bit of aluminium in there. Okay, so we've got an issue because the biology cannot function to make that nutrient available.
Yeah.
So we're not looking at just a straight chemistry thing. We're going, okay, how are we going to get that nutrient from the totals into the available? Because if you look over here in this totals and you add all of those numbers up in value, there's about $40,000 worth of nutrient per hectare.
Wow. Just not being used or accessible.
That's right. Well, you look at it. There's as far as the calcium is concerned, you got 20%.
Yeah.
Phosphorus is even worse.
So why would you put more of that on?
That's absolutely right. And so what we got to look at is, why did it do that? What's causing the problem? And these are the issues that when we come back down here and go, oh dear, my boron's 0.49. So that's not enough and boron's really, really important for calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and silicon availability. So there's bugger all available. Now, this is the interesting thing about the different soils and why you have to be really accurate, because if you go across back over here to the totals, the boron at 32.8 parts per million is quite good. That's really high. But the challenge, if you come down below this, the aluminium's 38,098, which is actually 3.8% aluminium in total in your soil.
Oh.
Right. And so aluminium and boron are both +3 elements. And so they're at they bounce off each other, and what has to happen in the aluminium is overpowering the boron. The boron's got to get control over the top of the aluminium. The aluminium's got to go into a hydroxide form, and the boron's got to come out so that we get the calcium, the phosphorus, the silicon, and the magnesium available. Otherwise, it just won't work.
Right.
Now, that's just one of the little issues. Now, in this soil, it's brilliant. Like if we look at this here in the copper at 51 parts per million, I mean, we've got soils on the west coast that are 4 parts per million. And in the availables down in here.
So they're quite lucky.
Oh, yeah, they're very lucky.
Yeah.
They're blessed.
Yeah,
Taranaki is blessed.
Wow.
But in the availables, there'll be about 0.5 of a part per million. Now, no biology can function under 1 part per million with these guys. And so you get all of these things that are not working just from, that's what happens when you get aluminium toxicity, or you haven't got enough of this or you haven't got enough of that. So
right. So is it a good time to ask the boron to aluminium relationship, which is, they're highlighted there in yellow with the blue arrow and the circular thing.
So we want to see that at 0.
Okay. But sure.
And we want to see that at 0.75 and above.
Okay, that's got to come up.
Yeah, and what it is that if you the big thing about all of these numbers and understanding the soil that you're working with at the time, you've got to know what's going to happen next.
Okay, so just going back to that example still, it's at 0.49, and if it goes above 0.75, will the 5 go down to 0?
It will help.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what happens is you can start to get the boron out and the biology break into the total amount of calcium and the pH changes and the humus all starts to come into place, the aluminium will start to fall out.
Okay.
And it doesn't fall out, it just changes to aluminium hydroxide, which is then not toxic.
But it's supposed to have a relationship with boron, so I'm trying to sort of get my head around that.
Well, it's a relationship that boron wins all the time.
Really?
Yeah, it has to beat it up and get it out of the way. Otherwise, you're in big trouble.
Okay.
If the boron doesn't get out there, you're in big trouble. No matter what. I mean,
Sure.
whether that's stone fruit, dairy cows, beef cattle, whatever, it's all really important to get it to go that way.
Okay.
So when these factors start to come into play, what happens is when the biology starts to crank up, this exchange capacity here, right at the top.
Oh, yeah, 8.36.
Yeah, well, in these types of soil, it should be around 13 or 14.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the exchange capacity of a soil, just think about it as how big's your fuel tank in your car.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, he's got a Mitsubishi Galant.
Right. You had to pick another one where it's a two-way arrow, right?
Yeah.
On that one.
Well, he should have a Ford Explorer.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah, it should be really big tank.
It's not a Kenworth.
Okay.
But it should be a lot bigger and more powerful than that.
So it's performing okay. It can be better.
No, it's not.
This is not okay.
No, it's not okay.
Okay.
Well, you think if the soil is around 12 or 13, it's 50% bigger.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so like if you're trying to grow more grass and more production, you need the soil capacity to go bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, you need these elements, particularly the calcium, the phosphorus, magnesium, you need them to come out to play.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not playing at the moment because the biology is shut down on this process and the aluminium's in control. And we've got this huge store of nutrient that we're not using.
Sure. So let's say you improve that total exchange capacity, top left, 8.36.
So if that,
but if you improve that, is that going to improve or change the calcium on the right-hand side, which it
won't change the one on the right-hand side, but it'll change the one on the left-hand side real fast. So
yeah, those two arrows are joined.
I know, because what happens here is if this goes to 12, that means the biology's working.
Right.
And they're building carbon in the soil. And then all of a sudden, bang, this guy will come up. He'll be up at 4,000 kilograms per hectare.
I see.
Okay, and bang, up comes the magnesium because you get the cyanobacteria working in the soil.
Okay.
You'll get them taking some of the magnesium out of the total amount of soil, and that'll go up to 400. And then we've still got enough sodium and potassium. Well, there's plenty over here. See, look at this. We got 879 kilos of potassium and just over a ton of sodium. See, there's no lack of these minerals. No. And the biology in that will sort out the ratios.
Yeah. So
once you get it starting to work and go, okay, these are the limiting factors. You've got a problem with aluminium. I can tell the biology is not working because the other factor that gives up the biology is not working is the imbalance between the nitrate and the ammonia. So when they're in a really healthy state, they're quite, although, like what you want to see is you're coming out of winter, you want the nitrate and the ammonia pretty well balanced. And if you've got that at around 10 parts per million each, you'll have enough nitrogen to last the whole of the season without buying 1 penny's worth.
Okay, so can you tell me about that relationship there with the runoff?
Okay, so this is really interesting. So like this is the lower portion. This is the 300 mil section. But what it's saying is the organic carbon. So for every percentage of organic matter, so you have 1,000 kilograms of held nitrogen per hectare. Now, so if that's organic matter, organic carbon is half of what organic matter is. So like if at 4.96, we'll call it 5% organic carbon. So let's go to that's 10% organic matter. That means there's 10 tons of nitrogen per hectare held in the humus. But the water's clean and there's no nitrate running off. Isn't that a bit of a trick, eh?
That's cool.
It is really cool. So these relationships of how the soil works and how they turn the trash over, and this is really important stuff because what it's showing at the moment, so you got quite a high organic matter up here, but it's not been turned into organic carbon. So like this organic matter, I know from looking at this that it's actually, there'll be quite a lot of dead material there that hasn't been broken down by the biology in the soil. So there's like just dry plant material and stuff that hasn't broken down. So you want to see that you want this broken down, and when that breaks down properly, then the sulfur levels shoot up, and they'll go up naturally to 23, 24 parts per million. And so, like people go, oh, your sulfur's low, I've got to put some on. Hold on. Let's have a look over here at the total amount of sulfur. There's 2 tons per hectare sitting there. I don't think that's really the problem.
No.
So these are the things that are critical where people are being told, oh, you need to put some sulfur on. Sulfur is a really dangerous product when used in a soluble or elemental form because it tends to go to sulfates. Sulfates want to bind with something, and it'll either be magnesium sulfate because there's lots of it in the soil. Look at this. There's 2,400 kilo. Or iron sulfate. Well, where's the iron? Well, have a look. Where are we going down here? Iron. There's 2.3% of your soil is made of iron. So what happens is if you put soluble sulfur in there with that iron, what you end up is iron sulfate. And then it goes down in the soil profile till it gets it where there's no air, it goes to iron sulfide, which is an iron pan.
It's an iron pan.
Yeah. So you end up sealing your soils off.
Right.
And so, all of these things, this information is absolutely critical to making very good decisions because, like, when we go and look at this part up at the top here, naturally in Taranaki, there's about 2,500 kilograms of phosphorus per hectare that came out of that big hill.
Right.
So all the rest has come from a superphosphate plain, which is by bringing that sulfur with acidic form of phosphate, lifted the aluminium, which caused the problem that the soils actually lowered in their productive capacity as the aluminium rose.
That bears repeating. So the superphosphate plain has caused more aluminium.
Yeah, it's caused more soluble aluminium than anything at all.
Okay.
And yet there's all the sulfur. What? There's all the sulfur there, but haven't got any available. Yeah, I know. And these are the things that people need to really come to grips with. This is not woo-woo science about greenies and all that sort of thing. This is technical stuff. If you want to make humus, it has sulfur, phosphorus, and nitrogen in it. They're all anions, which mean they leach if they're in a soluble form. But if they're bound in humus, they don't leach, and they're a protein form, and they go up into the plant. You get really healthy, and you got beautiful clean water with it. So what you got to do is take your head out of the chemistry set of going, oh, we need more phosphate. Well, that's all right. What form of phosphate? Then how are we going to get that in the plant? If it's a water-soluble phosphate in the soil, it's not going to last more than 2 or 3 days because it's going to bind with all that aluminium. So we're wasting nutrient and wasting money. Now, I can tell you that on a high-performing dairy farm, you use 6 kilograms of phosphorus per hectare per 1,000 kilograms of milk solids per year. So most people aren't taking any more than 6 kilograms off. So what's 6 into 9,000?
Don't ask me. I'm the worst with math.
Yeah, well, put it this way. We're going to be here for another 1,500 years.
Whoa. Okay.
We're in deep shit. We're not going to run out of phosphorus. The people are going, oh, the agriculture is going to crash. We're going to run out of phosphorus. And going, where? It's all still sitting there.
Wow.
So what most people have not come to grips with is that most products do not leach from the soil if they've been put on in a chemical form because they react and stabilize and stay there.
Mm.
The things that do fall out are the nitrates when there's not enough humus, and we're putting it on in the wrong form anyway.
Okay.
So this is why you want a soil test. You want accuracy right from the very foot. You go out in the paddock, you take the soil task, you know exactly where it came from. You're going to go back there next year or the year after. You're going to have this information to make wise decisions. And hey presto, all of a sudden the weeds start going away. You start getting better production, and you're doing all of these things, and you get healthier animals because this is all here. And it's so many people have done work on this stuff over the last 100 years, and it's just not been expressed in this manner. Well, I've seen expressed by a couple of people, but like how you changed the way we farm. Like this is easy.
How does this compare to other companies or government type tests?
A lot of people send me tests and they go, look, I can't do anything with this. I'd be wasting their money. If I don't have this soil test over here,
Yeah.
I've got no idea how much money's been invested in your farm and what you've got there that can be made available. It's like having a term deposit in the bank that you didn't even know you had.
Yeah.
And so like people say, oh, we're low in P in this country. Well, 9 tonnes per hectare is not low. No, so that's just out the gut. We don't need to worry about it. No, there's plenty of calcium, plenty of this. So I've got this, what I say, $45,000 per hectare of nutrients sitting there that I didn't even know I had. Because this test over here says, oh, I've only got a puny little amount and things aren't going too good. But now I know that I've got this massive store. Oh, why is it not working?
So none of those are shown in other tests?
No.
Wow.
There are some companies
Ewan, sorry, that last little bit you said, I was on your face, not on the screen. That thing over here, say that again?
Yeah, like the total test, some of the companies are starting to look at it now, but like we've looked at it when bloody 10 years ago, and I think from last 7 or 8 years, it's like if we don't have that, we can't actually help a farmer really, because you're just stabbing in the dark.
So what are the ones on the list here? Can you sort of run your mouse over the ones that are included generally versus, so we can just see the few that you normally get?
They'll have a parts per million, or like what they call they can do different phosphorus tests, like an Olsen P test.
Yeah.
And that's what that number will be expressed there, parts per million.
I hear a lot of people mentioning their Olsen P test.
Yeah, and it's using baking soda to test how much phosphorus comes available. And the original test was created for the high alkaline soils over pH 7, so I don't know why we're using it.
I get the sense from when you've mentioned it, that it's kind of one-dimensional.
It's not even one-dimensional. It shouldn't even be bloody mentioned. It's terrible.
Really? But pointless.
Well, it's a great sales tool because I think that one of the things that really, really gets to me is like on this journey, I didn't know any of this. And I'd ask people on the farming, like when doing soil tests, how does this work? What are we measuring? And no one could answer me this. And so the more I learnt and with Brookside training and being able to ask these questions, now I get it. Why didn't anyone tell us that before?
Yeah.
And so farmers have been made to feel dumb.
That's awful. Yeah.
But it's what's happened. And because the farmer feels comfortable, oh, my Olsen P's this, because that's the only thing they talk about. But what I want to show to people is like, let's get educated. Let's be a bit more open about this thing. I understand where farmers are coming from because I'm one of them, and I'm going, I don't get where you're coming from. You're trying to sell me this product, but on that test, but now I've found out there's 9 tons of it, and I'll never run out. In fact, I gave up smoking on that farm because I could have blown myself up.
Yeah, it's in the book and the podcast.
Yeah. So this is the whole process: is that we need to wise up what we have, how much is invested in our soils already, and then work out, actually, it's worth doing these soil tests and make critical changes. And guess what? It's so freaking accurate. You can see the percentage of organic carbon rising and falling, the amount of nitrogen at the top of the year. You'll see the changes that come from the total to the available, and you can see the limiting factors as you go along.
Hey, you mentioned the carbon, right? Some people are interested in selling carbon. Is this the kind of test that helps figure that out?
You can calculate that with the GPS off the area of the farm and give you the exact numbers.
That could be a game changer, right?
Well,
if
it
you're
is.
able to then get some money out of your test results.
There are.
Well, I don't mean to imply that that's what will happen if you do these tests.
We are well on our way down that track to go into the voluntary market.
Right.
And it's sort of one of the things I haven't been focusing too much on, but we know that we've got a very accurate way of actually monitoring what's going on in the farms.
Yeah.
And those numbers are acceptable. They've been verified by independent people in the States. In Australia that have been carbon verification. They go, these numbers are amazing about the numbers that we're lifting and seeing the changes.
Yeah. Is there anything else on this that you want to show with your mouse?
Well, I could be here for quite some time because just the total interrelations. The big thing is a lot of people have started getting into these base saturations. And what I've seen with this process, when there is enough nutrient over in the total pool here, and we understand what the limiting factors, and it all starts to work, all of a sudden these numbers actually turn into the magic numbers of what Albrecht was saying. It's like you'll end up with 68, 70% calcium. But guess what? The soil will be 50% bigger. This will be up 68, 70%, and you'll have 4,000 to 5,000 kilograms of calcium a hectare more. So you're doubling up the amount of nutrient available to the plant to grow health. Now, that's just in the top 150. If this whole process goes down through the 300,
wow.
Okay, so now we're lifting the production incredibly.
Yeah.
And our store of nitrogen, available nutrients, resilience to drought, all of that stuff changes and, hugely. Big game changers.
Fascinating. Okay, well, look, I'll just take it back into the final section here because I get the feeling that that's pretty much explained it for now.
Cool.
Do you have any final words on that?
No, look, just farming we need to be a lot more accurate. We're spending huge sums of money. We need to know why we're spending that money and what we expect to see out of it.
Right. Well, I've got up on screen the website. Now, if you're watching this, you're already in the website. But if you're probably because this is going to be on the site, but if you're catching this on YouTube, don't forget to go to Eco Farm Aotearoa. .nz, not a .co. but .nz, and all the contact stuff is there. You've also got your book, and that's available on Spotify to listen to.
Yeah,
the podcast coming is a breakdown of chapter by chapter for those that want to go on that journey with you in EcoFarmer's discovery.
Yeah, and we want to take it even further to more of a training process so people can really understand how this whole process works. I mean, we're still learning so much, but this amount of information is critical to run a healthy farm.
Fantastic. Cool. See you in the next one.
Cheers.